I'm Pam Smith, and welcome to an incredible number 3 of a series all about delicious salmon, 3 ways in 3 days. I am thrilled to be partnering with Kvarøy Arctic Salmon, and if you've not had a chance to see one of the earlier 2 in this series of 3, you have not yet had a chance to hear about how amazing this salmon is. Throughout my career as a nutritionist, a chef, a culinary nutritionist, helping chefs around the world to develop better food that is not just better for the body, but better for the planet, better for the taste buds, I have been looking for a salmon that came together on all of those platforms, and Kvarøy is the one that absolutely delivers. I want you to go to the website if you haven't yet, KvarøyArctic.com, and you'll be able to see the wonders of this beautiful island, an island north of the Arctic Circle. Cold, pristine, clear waters. Only 90 people or so live on that island, almost all of them dedicated to rearing this beautiful salmon in not only a sustainable and ethical way, but an innovative way. 3 generations of rearing salmon, but being able to commit to and have a passion about raising the salmon in a way that they're, again, helping the planet to be a better place to live for us and our children. We always talk about, when we're talking about salmon, or any fish for that matter, the fish ratio. We're always looking to lower the feeder fish, lower the amount of fish that a salmon, has to consume to be able to grow. And what Kvarøy has been able to do because of that innovation is they've been able to feed the fish this beautiful microalgae. The microalgae is what the little feeder fish that traditionally salmon would eat, it's what they're eating to be able to build those beautiful omega-3s. So when this fish is eating the algae, they're actually kind of cutting out the middleman. But it's not just that when it comes to innovation. Everything from blockchain, full transparency, from truly the beginning to the point that it gets onto your plate. And it's what's on your plate today that we're really going to celebrate. Salmon, 3 ways, 3 days, has been a pull from the pantry kind of a focus. Again, in these days when not all are able to get out to the store, not all are wanting to go out to the store, we're kind of learning to live from our pantry. We've been talking about the fact that we now have an expanded pantry. It's not just the dry goods, the beans and the pasta and the canned tomatoes. We now have an expanded pantry. It's also the freezer. So I encourage, as you're thinking about that freezer storage, if you will, that you want to make sure that you have some beautiful salmon to pull from, that you might even have some frozen vegetables in there to pull from. So when the supplies grow a little on the lean side, you always have an ample supply to pull forth. Our very first salmon in these 3 ways, 3 days series was a beautiful cedar plank salmon. And we have kind of replicated here a salmon that was done with a beautiful mustard marinade, a little bit of a Creole seasoning, some beautiful roasted vegetables, and a to die for smoky sun-dried aioli. That salmon, we didn't just cook as a fillet. Instead, we cooked a whole side of salmon, a large fillet, so that then we would have excess available, so that then yesterday we put together an, again, to die for, salmon, potato, and corn chowder. And it was slim pickings to even find some to put in this bowl because it was so delicious. We tended to want to eat it all. And with that, let me just take a moment to stop and say, you have behind the Nicole cam, Nicole Talbot. She's my daughter, and she was also partaking of that wonderful chowder last night. And today, number 3 in this series, we're going to be doing salmon cakes. You might have had crab cakes before, but maybe not salmon cakes. But we're going to be doing salmon cakes with a difference. We'll be talking about what to pull from the pantry to be able to pull it together, and we're serving it with a delicious mango and red pepper salsa. So lots of flavor here, something to kind of brighten up your day with all of the dark news that we sometimes are reading. Amazing to have just that point of bright flavors, that point of bright colors, and we're going to put that dish together today. Not only is Nicole doing an incredible job getting up close and personal with many of these kinds of cooking techniques, she's also available to take your questions. So as you are watching, any question that comes to mind, please ask. We'll try our best to answer it, not just here while we're live, but even after the fact. We're here to answer your questions and to really give you a taste of the Arctic. If you've, again, not had a salmon that you've ever met that you really enjoyed, this might be the very one that you've been looking for. We talked about yesterday that it's almost the meat lover's salmon because the flavors are just so clean and pure. None of the fishiness that sometimes people tend to pull back from a salmon. None of the mushiness that sometimes people experience with a farm-raised fish. Instead, because the fish is swimming against this cold, strong current, the protein is lean. And what is in that together with the protein are those beautiful omega-3s. Omega-3s that right now we're looking for in a big way to be able to boost our immunities, to keep our mood at its very best, to reduce inflammation, all of the things that salmon can give us, and yet oh so delicious. So questions, we're here to answer them. Getting your taste buds kind of in gear, we're here to do that in a big way, and we're also here to envision you in a way that you can put together these recipes. The recipes are available for you on the Kvarøy Arctic site, so take a look at that. And again, if you're stumbling over the spelling and the pronunciation, notice how I'm saying it. Yes, it's spelled Kvarøy. It's pronounced Kvarøy, like Kwarøy, rays of sun. So that's how we get started, and that's what we're going to do to start this particular dish. Again, salmon cakes. I grew up in the South with parents and grandparents that came from the Kentucky area. I grew up having salmon patties. It was kind of my comfort food. That's what my mom would put together on a Sunday evening, usually with macaroni and tomatoes. It was just something I had, but instead of this beautiful salmon we're going to be using tonight, Kvarøy, she would use canned salmon. It's what was available. Instead of beautiful Panko breadcrumbs, dry Japanese breadcrumbs, she used saltine crackers. Instead of Dijon mustard, she used probably yellow mustard that you would put on a hot dog. She used what she had in her pantry. Well, today we have, again, an expanded pantry, and we have a little bit of an elevated pantry, and that's what we're going to pull from. Nicole, question.
Well, we do have a question. Hi, everybody. We have a question of, one, where can we get the Kvarøy salmon, which I will throw to you in a second. But I wanted to say, if anybody's sitting there thinking, gosh, it would be great if this Kvarøy salmon would just show up at my front door.
Yes.
While you're at the Facebook site, head on over to the post that talks about the contest. They have a contest going happening right now that the deadline is tomorrow. So you've got about 24 hours to get just a post. Just get your name on that contest, and one lucky winner will get Kvarøy delivered to their door.
Fantastic. And so tomorrow's the deadline. So this is a perfect opportunity to get right on. I will also say, if you're not one of the lucky ones that gets drawn, you can find Kvarøy in most Whole Foods. Kvarøy is, again, the one salmon that was able to get through all of the requirements of Whole Foods seafood. Again, sustainability, absolute focus on quality of feed, using non-GMO kinds of products. Again, that fish ratio that we talked about, fish feed ratio, again, it met those requirements, and that's why you'll find it at Whole Foods more and more all across the nation. I encourage you to go in and ask specifically for Kvarøy Arctic salmon, and it's really just such a taste treat, and you'll see that as this comes together, which means we need to get going to get it together. Let's get started with the salmon cakes themselves. In some ways, it's kind of just pulling upon many of the things we've been using in the earlier parts of this series. Some of the same ingredients, because again, we're wanting to pull from that pantry and that number of items that might be small, but by creating it in different forms, using different techniques for cooking, you don't get the same taste fatigue. As much as I love that salmon chowder that we made yesterday, by day 4, I would have been really tired of it. Instead, I'm using that beautiful cedar plank that I cooked just 2 days ago to now turn around and put it into something completely different. A lot of veggies in here, and I've already done a little pre-chop of those veggies. We're using shallots in the mango salsa, so because of that, I wanted to go ahead and use shallots here. Red onion or sweet Vidalia onion will work just as well, but I didn't want you to have to buy 2 things to go into this recipe. We're also using some red pepper. A nice fine dice of the red pepper gives the color, gives the crunch, gives the flavor. We're also using some corn. Now this is fresh corn because I'm coming from Florida and we have beautiful fresh corn coming into our markets. But if you're pulling from that freezer, if you're pulling from the pantry, your corn might be frozen. And all I encourage you to do, a tip I gave yesterday, is to thaw that corn over a colander, let it dry well, toss it with a little bit of olive oil, put it out into a hot sheet pan, one that you've had in the oven at 400, smoking hot. Toss the corn with a little bit of olive oil and a little bit of Creole or salt and pepper beforehand. Lay it out in that sheet pan, and what you're going to do is bring a little char to it. It's a roasted corn that just brings frozen corn absolutely to life. We also have some celery, and that also is done in a very nice small dice. You want all of them to be about the same size, and it'll be the same size we're going to use with the salmon that we have also flaked. And last, some green onion, scallions. These are some beautiful spring onions that we found at the store, and not in your recipe, but because I'm quite crazy about it, I also am adding just a little bit of minced jalapeno. If you're a person that's not so crazy about heat in your food, then you certainly can leave that out, which is why I left it out of the recipe. But I like to add it, and you'll find that not only am I adding a little bit of heat with that jalapeno, I'm also going to add a little bit with some hot sauce in just a bit. With that, we're just going to keep adding flavor, but also adding what's going to be the texture of this. This is definitely more salmon than it is cake, but we do add not only some mayonnaise, but we're adding a little bit of those Panko dried breadcrumbs, a little bit of Dijon Mustard as well, and the juice of a lime. I've microwaved these limes for about 30 seconds. If you don't know that little kitchen hack, it's a great one because by doing that, you burst open the cells of the lime. So when you squeeze it, the juice that comes from it is absolutely amazing. It's not just good for salmon cakes, it's also great for Moscow mules or whatever cocktail you might be making. So just 30 seconds in the microwave, and again, you release just so much juice. I do that with lemons, I do it with limes, even with oranges that we also will be using in just a bit. And then as I mentioned, just a little touch of hot sauce if you choose. Whatever your favorite is, I use about a half a tablespoon of the hot sauce. My favorite is Cholula. I love the heat, I love the acidity, it's absolutely perfect. And last but not least, a little bit of some Creole seasoning. Now we're using our Creole kitchen, our PS flavor, but Creole seasonings are just easy to find any grocery store that you go to, and certainly on that small little retailer called Amazon. Nicole, question?
Yes, if you didn't start with the cedar plank cooked salmon that we did a couple days ago, what would you recommend some additional seasonings in the initial prep of the salmon for the cakes?
Absolutely, and I would always cook the salmon first. Now, if I was making a salmon burger, I might actually do a fine chop or even a grind on the salmon and cook the salmon as a burger the same way that I would do a hamburger. Or lamb burger, whatever meat you might happen to be using. But in this case, I'm really wanting to use the cooked salmon, and if I wasn't doing cedar plank, maybe I'd pull some salmon from the grill, or maybe just do a really quick sear. Again, some seasoning. I would do the same thing, either a Creole seasoning, could even use a chili lime seasoning, or just some salt and pepper. If you're searing it, just a little drizzle of olive oil in a nonstick pan. Season the fish, pat it dry, season the fish, get it into the pan, 2 minutes or so, do a quick flip, and then I generally finish it off in the oven, which is exactly what we're going to do with these salmon cakes. I find that if you can get a nice little brown, almost golden brown deliciousness on the outside, then you can get it into the oven to finish cooking on the inside.
Beautiful,
It
thank
works
you.
really well. So I'm mixing all of this together, and then I'm going to add the salmon that I have already flaked. And I flaked it into pretty much of a thumbnail kind of a flake. I call for 2 cups, but I want to say don't be worried about using heaping cups. It's really not so much about how much are you using that will be too much for this. But again, some good heaping cups work out really, really beautifully. I'm gonna get that mixed in, do a quick little stir, and the final ingredient that needs to go into this are eggs, but I'm not gonna add the eggs yet because the eggs I don't want to be tasting. So I'm gonna do all of this mixture. I'm gonna use a tasty little tasting spoon. Oh my gosh, not even cooked yet, delicious. That's when I would decide if I needed to use a little more Creole. That's when I would decide if maybe I needed a little more lime, maybe a little more hot sauce, but it's absolutely perfect. Question?
Yes. You talked about flaking the salmon into, that small size so that we could get it in. How do you flake the salmon? I know we talked a little bit about it yesterday, but for those who didn't get to see yesterday, would you just kind of go over that again?
Let's use this one here just to give a little bit of a picture. This was the fillet that we used, and this is how you flake it. You literally just pull it apart, but the thing that I really want you to be able to see is the beautiful moisture in this. This has been cooked now since Saturday, refrigerated, but no, it's not dry. Instead, that beautiful omega-3 is just bringing all of that moisture and all of that incredible flavor to this fish. So flaking is simply pulling it apart. We're not trying to cut it into little dices. No need for that. And again, you can see how easily it flakes. Great question. And since we did that, let's go ahead and add that in too. Why not? I'll give that a quick little stir. I'm using in this 1 whole egg, and then I'm using 1 additional egg white. The egg white together with the whole egg is going to give some of the holdability of this. It's kind of the glue that lets it all stick together. Salmon cakes are a little delicate, so again, we're not looking to have them be like glue, but we really want to have it all pulled together and pulled together nicely. Just a little quick whisk of that egg. I've already tasted it, so I know the flavor is just right, because I don't want to taste it now. Now that I've added the egg, I'm going to let that just mix right into it. And at this point, you have some choices. You could go ahead and form this into some patties, or you could even refrigerate this if you wanted to wait and do that even tomorrow. It holds really nicely and beautifully. What you're going to wait to do though is put the additional panko breading on the outside. At this point though, what I would do, I want this to make about 8 servings. So you can see that I'm kind of got that all mixed together. I'm gonna kind of just divide this almost as if I was cutting a pie into 4ths, then straight on down. And that's what's letting me know that I'm making an even amount. I'll scoop one of those little sections up, form it into balls. Not needing to worry about forming it into a cake at this point. Just form it into a ball and lay it out onto a platter. Take another one of your little wedges, if you will. form that into a ball.
I love the idea of cutting it like a pizza.
Yeah.
To have those very even sizes instead of actually trying to form it into the same size tennis ball. It's
Who can
just
do that,
seems very
right?
challenging.
Yes.
We do have a question while you were forming those. Could you talk about hot sauce versus cayenne?
Oh, absolutely. So we have a little bit of cayenne in the Creole seasoning, and any Creole seasoning will have that. Cayenne is the actual chili pepper itself, whereas a hot sauce is made from chili peppers, but it's not just the chili pepper. It also has vinegar. It's an extraction of the chili oil. So it gives this incredible boost and brightness of flavor. Many people are familiar with Tabasco. Sriracha has become quite popular in the last few years, but again, everyone has their favorite. I was crazy about sriracha for maybe a decade before it became cool, but once it went to Doritos, I was kind of ready to find something different. So again, Cholula is the one that I do. Cayenne you want to be careful with because it's such an intense kind of heat. It's dry heat, but sprinkled into even mango. That little bit of heat does an incredible thing with helping to balance flavor, but you want to be careful with what you do. Once you get these formed into these little balls, you're then going to want to flatten them just a bit. You already have them lined up, ready to go, and then get them right into that additional panko. And all I'm going to do is coat these, have them all ready to go. I have a couple that I had done a little bit earlier. Flatten, get them right in, and do the coat. If you wanted to add a little bit of Creole seasoning to the panko or salt and pepper, you are welcome to do that as well. It's just adding nothing but more flavor. And you see how easy those balls become the magic. I'm gonna go for a little wet rag here. And then I'm going to start the process of getting these beautifully browned. I have a pan, nonstick pan on the stove, nothing in it yet. I'm gonna bring it to a quick heat. This is induction heat, so it heats up very quickly. Once it heats enough that if I put a little water droplet in it and it kind of scooted along the bottom of the pan, that's my sign that it's ready to go. Put just a little bit of oil in the bottom. Do a little bit of a swirl around, and then to that, we're going to add these beautiful salmon patties that we just put together. Did you hear me call it a salmon patty? That was me from my youth. Again, these beautiful salmon cakes. We're gonna get this in and let those just start to do a little bit of that golden brown deliciousness. You can hear them starting to cook for us. Really beautiful, right?
So beautiful.
So while that is working its magic, I'm going to go ahead and put together the mango salsa, unless there is a question waiting in the wings. Okay?
No, we are good right now, but if anybody has questions, don't hesitate to write. We have a lot of people commenting that it looks so good, that someone's mouth is watering, they're very ready. And this is definitely hitting home, I think, for a lot of us that are already ready to eat it. One question, do you have this on medium-high heat?
This is on medium-high heat. That's exactly right. I usually start on medium-high. Certain things I'll start very high. If I was searing scallops and wanting to get that quick caramelization, I would make the pan smoking hot. But because I'm browning the breadcrumbs, I want to be a little gentle with that, and you'll find that they brown very, very quickly. I've had them in there for not more than a minute, and you'll see already you're starting to get some of that, again, beautiful, beautiful browning. And I'm turning them quite gently because, again, they are somewhat fragile, but once they cook up, they work beautifully. How's that for beauty?
I love the golden color.
So great. Once I turn them, I'm going to cook them again for another minute, minute and a half on this side to let them brown as well. And then I'm gonna slip them into the oven. Generally, I'll have the oven set at around 400, a very, very high heat. I have some that were in, they're gonna be able to be, through the magic of TV, pulled right out so that you can see how they really come together and come together nicely. But while those are finishing up, let's go ahead and work on this mango. Now, again, fresh mangoes are amazing, and when you can get them fresh, this is in the season, so it just screams mango season all around to me. And again, it's that brightness, it's vitamin C, it's potassium, loaded with nutrition. But mango is also something you can buy frozen. So just like using frozen corn instead of fresh corn, can feel free to do that. You can also find them jarred. Oftentimes when they're in the jar, they have a really great texture, but they tend to be packed in sugar. So I just let those be rinsed a little bit before I then dry them and cut them into the dice. So this is going into the oven. And I already have one in play. And out it comes, and we see just how beautiful it is. It'll only take about 5 to 6 minutes for those salmon cakes to cook as they should. Remember, everything is pretty much cooked through. The salmon's already cooked, the mayo, the breadcrumbs. All that we're wanting to do is just get enough heat to brown them and to hold all of that together, and of course cook the egg as well. Yes?
For the mango salsa, if you were using frozen mangoes, would you thaw them before using, and if yes, how long?
I would thaw it in the refrigerator and let it come to a place where it's softened, and again, then dry it. That's the whole thing about frozen. Either frozen, or if it's in the jar, there tends to be a lot of moisture released in it, and there's moisture released in this fresh mango too, but it's mango juice as compared to the ice crystals that are found. So let it dry. I usually pull it out and put it onto a plate so that it can thaw and dry at the same time on paper towels, then pull it and do your little dice, just like we're doing with this.
Super.
Okay, so some of the similar ingredients, as I've already said, we're using shallots in this, and again, red onion would work out just beautifully. Also using red pepper, and again, very similarly, cut in a really nice fine dice. If you didn't have fresh red pepper, you could use roasted red pepper or use tomatoes. Tomatoes would be an awesome substitute for the red peppers as well. Roasted red peppers or tomatoes, again in that nice small dice. We're adding just a little bit of cilantro. And here too, if you wanted to add a little bit of jalapeno, you could do that as well. And I actually snuck some into that cilantro because it was so hard for me to think about making this mango salsa without it. In addition to that, we're adding just a little bit of orange juice. Again, about 1/2 of an orange is what you're looking to do. This is a blood orange, and I'm just gonna squeeze this in and get that fresh orange juice out. If you don't have any fresh oranges that are available, you can certainly just use orange juice right from the carton. And then we're going to add some lime. Again, like I did before, microwave this for about 30 seconds. Going to do that nice squeeze, unbelievable amount of juice. And yes, another question.
We actually have 2 questions. The age-old, is there a substitute for cilantro? Mm-hmm. And is blood orange more sweet?
Ah, nice question. The answer to, is there a substitute for cilantro? You're right, age-old question. People either love cilantro or really don't love cilantro. People that don't love it say it tastes like dirty dishwasher water. I don't know what that tastes like, but that's the feeling that it is. Flat leaf parsley works out really great and gives you that same color, that same little pop of freshness. So that is always my go-to in place of the cilantro. But don't feel guilty about not liking cilantro. It doesn't mean that you're not a foodie. It just means that you probably have a DNA that says it's not for you. The recipe also calls for about a half teaspoon of cinnamon. I'm using our Mai Chai. Oftentimes in a mango salsa, I'll use a 5-spice, and the Mai Chai, because it has just all of that exotic kind of flavor. I love what it does in this. Cinnamon works absolutely beautifully. I say in the recipe, you can splash it with a little coconut rum. The aromatics of that are really amazing, but just the cinnamon itself is a surprise and works out beautifully. Another question?
Yes, would you go over your lime hack again? Do you microwave the whole lime for 30 seconds to make it easier to juice, or do you cut it first?
No. Whole lime. So you just pop it in. I microwaved 3 limes actually, and so I did it for about 45 seconds. But whole lime popped in, then you get it out, cut it. Now, if I was not using a squeezer, but instead using just my hand action like I did on the orange, I always cut limes in the longitudinal way so that you're getting the linear as compared to in half crosswise, because you get a little more squeeze action with that. But with the squeezer, I tend to cut it just as the shape is for it.
And before we get too far away from the orange, we were wondering if blood oranges did you choose them because they're more sweet, or if they can't get a blood orange, would a cara orange be good? What would you choose?
So they are not necessarily more sweet, they just look cool, and actually these are cara, the ones, and actually you just get whatever you can. The flavor profile is very similar. Again, it's just really fun to see the color with it. But navel oranges, I always tend to go for one that doesn't have seeds. So cara, navel oranges, blood oranges, all work beautifully.
Super.
I snuck in a little bit of that same Creole seasoning because I did the taste and realized I hadn't added it yet. What I haven't also added is honey. The recipe calls for a 1/4 cup, but that's completely based on how sweet your mango is. This mango is fresh and delicious and sweet. So I'm gonna only use about 2 tablespoons, about half of this 1/4 cup. If you were using frozen mango, which is not as sweet, you might need to go ahead and use that full 1/4 cup of the honey. Get that mixed up, and you can see you just have a really, really beautiful, bright, delicious mango salsa. This is not just delicious as we're serving it. With the salmon cakes, wow. Best I've ever had. But it's also something you can use just with great versatility. This mango salsa more than likely will find its way into a salad tomorrow. I use this almost in place of a vinaigrette. It gives all of that brightness and freshness of flavor. Could top it with a piece of that seared salmon. You've got me thinking as we talked about the searing, how beautifully it is. And then as you see, to plate it, because there is orange and there is lime within it, I'm literally going to use that for just a little bit of a garnish. Going to place our beautiful salmon cakes, Kvarøy Arctic salmon cakes here. And then just spoon a little bit of this beautiful mango salsa right to the front. You could certainly add a little bit on top if you wanted to do that. Or the other day when we were doing the cedar plank, we made that beautiful smoky sun-dried tomato aioli. That would be so amazing on these salmon cakes. I can't almost say how delicious that would be. You could even paint the plate with that and then add a little bit of the, just a little bit of that mango salsa to the top. And then we want to add just a little bit of some added cilantro or your flat leaf parsley, and we've got a meal.
We have a meal.
And really
I think
delicious one.
Everybody's wanting to win the salmon to show up at their door, but I have a sneaking suspicion they'd also really like this to show up at their door right now.
If only.
Before we
Fresh
go,
yes.
One of the most important questions: what wine would you pair with this?
Well, funny you ask. No surprise, I'm drinking a Chardonnay, and this one is an A to Z Chardonnay. It's one out of Oregon. Really bright fruits. It has a lot of citrus notes to it. It's unoaked, so it works beautifully with this dish. It brings out that citrus. It has enough bright fruit that it takes away from some of the heat that's in place, and it's just a perfect blending, especially with the mango sauces. So great question. And with that, I should say cheers. Bon appetit. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, Nicole and the Nicole Cam. Thank you for all of you that had questions and comments, and definitely check out these recipes. I'd love to hear how you enjoy your 3 ways of salmon in 3 days. We'll see you soon. Thanks so much.